Hello, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Let's play chess. You might not see my face as clearly as usual, so here I'll turn on these lights for just a moment. There I am. But I'm having a wonderful view of some really heavily falling snow here in northern New Jersey. And I'm looking forward to seeing some snowflakes in between sessions of calculating on the chessboard, the virtual 2D chessboard. All right, guys, here we go. I'm going to be playing game in 10 minutes per side per game. Let's go. God bless you. opponent wants a rematch, I'll accept, but other than that, this would be a breaking point. I'll take a break and probably review that most recent game and probably not review the game before it. This game pretty much just got beat, checkmated as a result of it. So I don't see any need to go over that game, over the first of the two 10-minute games here. I'm glad to see that this second game I played with a good amount of accuracy, and even better, no blunders, no misses, one mistake. That's okay by me. 5 inaccuracies is a lot, but in light of the other things, overall, I'm feeling good about the accuracy and against accurate play on the other end too. Now, how about C2? So when did this game break? Here, around or before move 10. Okay, that's not abnormal. We'll go to the game and I want to set these so that there's one fewer line and fewer time per calculation. Actually go to the review and let this play through. Alright, I've been seeing this a lot online recently. Maybe I think it's part of my willingness to play C4, where white kind of has the C and E files, but I think them as 3 and 5, and black is setting up a strong center at the D file, or attempting to. That's where we see both C6 and D5 early. So C takes D, C takes D, E takes D, Queen takes D to level the material. And doesn't this look a lot like a Scandinavian defense? This is within the Caro-Kann, according to the input here. And with the Queen on D5, white will develop with tempo. Knight C3, aiming at the Queen. She goes back to D8, and white has a bit of an edge, mostly due to development and initiative, which I know development is not one of our 6 fundamental forces of chess, but white has then initiative in this. White could also maybe claim some kind of advantage in mobility, because just by the fact of how the pawns are spread, especially on the E file, where the E file pawn's missing, this gives mobility to the F1 bishop and the D1 queen, whereas with the D pawn missing on black side, that only helps really the bishop in that case. Well, you could say that this file, the D file, instead of these diagonals, the D file is strongly influenced by the queen's positioning. So maybe about equal on mobility. But we don't want to launch into our 6 fundamental forces of chess analysis yet. This is move 5. I don't like to do that kind of analysis all that early. We kind of just, that's the overview, not all the way into an analysis is what I'm trying to say. I don't know if I'm consistent on the terminology with that, but for right now that'll do. G6 is like a little bit slow, and black wants a really powerful bishop on G7, and probably then knight to block it, but then later unblock it sometimes in dramatic effect, and then castle kingside and have a safe king behind this well-known structure. White doesn't care. I mean, I care, but not on the chessboard. White, in fact, is going to play bishop b5 check and try to mess things up real early in this game. I recall that I did. I set black off balance in the early going here. And these corner tactics are just about working out for white. They're not. We'll go to the computer lines here. They don't quite work out, but they come pretty close, which means black has to play accurately. Bishop b5 isn't the best thing. What I would say, if you're black in this position, notice that while there's a lot of pressure, especially on d7, that point is also guarded 3 times. It'll be difficult for white to muster enough force. See here, it's 2 clicks away, but easy for black to defend again if that's what black wants to do. Knight to f6 is a good move here, and I see that Torch agrees with me. Knight to f6, and we have 4 pieces protecting the bishop on d7, who also, mind you, in some lines does indeed play bishop takes b5, so that's also part of this. Don't get too worried about things. If you're protecting an onslaught early, sometimes you'll be protecting it adequately and you rush it along, although I don't recommend that for other reasons, but in some cases a6 will be fine. I don't recommend it most of the time. It can be the a6 pawn can become just pinned to its rook on a8. Anyway, captures and captures on b5. And it looks like white has so much as an opportunity here to play d5. I did. And then, again, forcing your opponent to play accurately. Pawn to d5. So a lot of moves here that look really tempting. Like how about queen takes d5, but then the fork on c7 check garners the queen once the king moves out of the way. So even worse than a free rook on a8 is losing an entire queen on d5. And there are other such things, tricky. There are other ways for black to lose material at this point. At this point. But my opponent found queen to a5 check, and I was glad to capture, reduce the amount of material on the board, and get to it with the material lead. So capturing the queens was because I know I'm going to have a material lead after knight to c7 check, and I'll pick up the rook on a8. And white's priority here is to white's main task or priority here is to rescue this a8 knight. A lot of the game will be tied up in that, and I think I did poorly at that task. Torch suggests knight f3 here, which is, I think we're kind of saying so long to the knight at a8. And if Torch says it, I believe that maybe that just means that knight's a goner. It feels, it's hard. Doesn't it hurt a bit? We can't leave him behind. In real life, we wouldn't. In chess, I could have afforded to play knight f3, but I could also, as it so happens, play bishop to e3, and I'm aiming at capturing on a7, not only for the pawn, though that's nice, but also for the move knight to b6 check. And it looks like the bishop will be able to escape somehow, and the knight will have escaped, and then we'll have our knight back in play and ready to break heads on the chessboard. Let's not go with that. Well, unfortunately for the knight at a8, knight to f6 comes first, and and he is just not going to be able to be salvaged. Uh, and I play b3, which is a lousy move, trying to capture my opponent's knight on a5, the black knight on a5. But here it's just clear that what should I have played instead here? Probably just knight to b6 check. Pawn takes b6. Bishop takes b6. And I think we're not gonna trap the a5 knight, but it leads to some moves that are overall better for white. Let's try that out against computer. Just saying, okay, we can lose the knight if you want, but we're gonna at least gather a pawn from it. So knight to b6 check is considered a mistake. Alright, then maybe we play bishop takes a7. And that's even worse. Yeah, this is the main reason why, I mean, knight c7 is not good, really. It doesn't help. It doesn't help white. Alright, well, we'll let those be. Instead, I played b7 and got a real clear, pretty much a clear way to trade a piece. I lose my bishop on a5, double my opponent's pawns in the process. I have the exchange, which is might be bitten into on d5. But I'm playing for trading material, and keeping my king safe. Here's a trade of knights on d5. You know, when you're ahead material, you always want to create those kinds of trades. I think my opponent played with a lot of tenacity. Pawn to d4 shows that this pawn might be defensible. For instance, rook to d8 and king to c5, and that pawn's very well covered. And I know that on the c5 I could check the king back, but then maybe he's going to d5. White has a clear advantage, but no clear victory. And then black, it looks like, I mean, I can't fault black for this, but the move king to d5 shows that black is really committed to holding on to the d4 pawn. In fact, this is what I was just recommending for black a moment ago. This might be the best play. It's just not good enough, because the way that the a pawns are situated, you might lose one and then two. The way that the 7th rank pawns and bishop are situated, you might lose 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4. I kind of bounced into this position where I have my rook at c7, and all of a sudden he's the strongest piece on the board, and to great effect at that. We're going to grab at least one pawn out of this mess. Black's king to defend the f7 pawn. I would otherwise let my rook disturb this awesomely placed bishop, who's keeping black's only trump intact. So he wants to control that side of the board before anything gets out of hand, and that still leads me to pick up 2 pawns on the queen side. I get a trade on c3, and the rook is adequate to prevent the c pawn from queening. In some situations, the king is actually close enough after this move. No, here with white to move the king is close, and yes, grab the pawn and all that, but let's play it through just to be sure. Then equals pawn to c1 equals queen check, and king takes c1. And this is all part of it's white's turn to move. e2 is within the square of the pawn, which means white will catch up to that piece in time. Now, we don't really want to test that as, in theory, bishop h6 could mess that up if f4 goes away, and then the bishop's protecting c1. So anyway, getting on with things here. Rook to c5 is the best move, and the light square will not be in black's control. Whenever this pawn is going to c2, that's when the rook's going to capture it on c2. Keep our rook nice and sturdy on the c file, and then we're going to go over here and gang up on the c3 pawn. Transition to this easily won endgame. In this situation, if my opponent chooses to defend against the queenside pawns, then the white king will work his way to the kingside pawns and just gobble them up. If this pawn moves forward before the white king gets there, then f takes g5 is adequate, and then that's a clear path to promotion. Note too that if my king's over here eliminating these three pawns, then what if black's king gets the king side and starts eliminating white's pawns? Well, it doesn't really matter. We can, even if things sort of hit the skids, at some point to get to b3, as long as they don't move b3, at some point to get to b3, black has to capture on a2, where immediately white will play b4 and will be counted out if you want, but the white pawn will just always be one square out of reach on its way to promotion on b8. Promote safely. Now we have a queen, and the rest is about a matter of picking up pawns and maybe promoting another one, or knowing your fundamentals of king and queen checkmates. So king to e4. And yeah, so even if my opponent's king gobbles up a pawn or two here, he has to double back to the e file, then back again to the f file. We can make things crazy if we wanted to, but it's probably best just to keep pushing on the a file over and over again. It's going to take black a long number of moves before the h pawn queens, or before the f pawn queens, or even, it's done. All right, so here we go. Sort of like basic king pawn endgames, and I chose to swap. I didn't want to make an issue out of the most elegant win. I'm just glad to have, against a strong opponent, a strong win. So then checkmate on h7. Checkmate on h7. And we see that this game was very accurate. That's all. All right. I'm going to call my mom back and then probably make some dinner. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Have a great night.